Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to another session of the BIPOC Executive Search LinkedIn Live, where we really look at the firm discussing a holistic view of both the professional and personal aspects of our journey and our lives. Today's topic is stay well, stay connected, self-love, and collective care. And of course, with the holiday season coming around, getting a little bit cold here in Toronto, we really wanted to zone in and understand some of the key thoughts, checking in with where we're at, and also some tools on where we are with regarding to our mental health, especially within the BIPOC community. Before we start and before introducing our amazing panel, I want to go ahead and talk about doing our land acknowledgement. And of course, with regards to Indigenous communities, they've always known that being in good relations with peoples, creatures, and the land that is integral to well-being. In the spirit of living in kinship and community, land acknowledgements are not only a means of declaring sovereignty and treaty rights, but are also a way for all people to feel more connected to a place. BIPOC Executive Search was established in Toronto, a Mohawk word that translates to the place in the water where the trees are standing. It has been and continues to be the home of the Chippewa, the Wendat, or the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, the Mississaugas of the Credit, and many other First Nations, Inuits, and Métis peoples. The area covered by Treaty 13 is signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit for time immemorial. The lush waterways, rich soils, and purifying effects of the Great Lakes ecosystems have made it a place of abundance for food, medicines, knowledge and cultural exchange, and commerce for Indigenous peoples. For those of us at the firm who are non-Indigenous, we will commit to honoring Indigenous ways of being and knowing by slowing down to examine our relationship to land, ecology, and ancestry. And we'll research and learn about the original caretakers of the lands we are occupying. We'll reflect on when and how we arrived at this land. And finally, using our website, we actively work on moving from acknowledgement to long-term solidarity, kinship, and relationship building with Indigenous communities. So again, we'd like to acknowledge everyone here and thank you so much for just showing up today and being a part of our live session. I am going to go ahead and introduce our amazing persons that are joining us today. First would be Avery Jackman, Jessica Horton, Jesse Skinner. We have one of our other superstars, Stacey Ann Buchanan, in the background. And then, of course, and but not least, Melissa Sumnath. We do believe that setting the tone for today's session is really important. And so what I'd love to do is invite Melissa to start us off with our own individual check-in and intention setting.
Thanks so much, Chris. And thanks for opening up the space in such a good way. When I think about things like staying well and staying connected and self-love and care in these ways, oftentimes I go back to my breath. And so I thought it might be helpful to start off our time here with a bit of breath work. And so I invite you to feel free if you want to turn off your video cameras or mute or stay on with us, and feel free to listen to my voice. Close your eyes. Whoever's listening with us as well, close your eyes, sit back in your chair, let your feet firmly touch the ground, and take a breath in here. In, 2, 3, 4. Hold your breath. 2, 3, 4. And exhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold your breath. 2, 3, 4. And in that breath, I want you to imagine your feet touching the ground that's within your home, that is grounded into the earth, on the lands that you might be on. And feel that connectedness and groundness into the earth. And take a breath in here. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Hold your breath. 2, 3, 4. Big exhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold your breath. 2, 3, 4. And from this place, take another deep breath in as far as you'd like to go. Big exhale out as long as you need it to be. And when you're ready, feel free to open back up your eyes, wiggle your toes and fingers. Yes, maybe stretch your neck and coming back into this space. And that kind of grounding technique just went through a bit of grounding into the earth, went into what I like to call the box 4 breathing technique. For anyone that might have met me, you probably know that I'm a fan of this technique where we inhale for a count of 4, we hold our breath for a count of 4, we exhale for a count of 4, and then hold our breath. So there's a bit of a box that happens with that. And part of the reason as well where breathing can be really helpful is to help bring us back into our kind of executive functioning brain here. I thought that might be a nice way to even further send us along in this conversation. Back over to you, Chris.
Thank you so much, Melissa. And I agree. I think in the spirit of the way that we lead holistic lives, just the aspect of checking in and taking a moment and taking a pause, I think is a very important process and habit that everybody can learn to adopt in their own unique individual way. So really, thank you for sharing that with us. And so, of course, as we said today, today's topic is focusing on staying well, staying connected, self-love, and collective care. And myself, along with my esteemed colleagues, and of course, you in the audience virtually, we want to go ahead and put that question out there that looks at mental health, and mental health, especially around this time when it's the holidays. Sometimes people can tend to feel a bit lonely. There's a bit of the cold weather, the shortening of the daylight, the sunlight. And so sometimes these things can lead us to conditions such as seasonal affective disorder. So in asking to everyone here, what are some of the things that you do to check in and to manage your mental health? And to kind of give it some level of structure, I'd like to kind of put it in the buckets of the first one of self-checking in, just kind of being aware of where we're at, how we're feeling at this time. Because a lot of times we have all these different emotions and thoughts, and we don't necessarily take the time, as we've done with Melissa, to acknowledge it and say, hey, this is what's really going on. The second one, really looking at what are things we do when it comes to collective care. And then the third, which will round us off, which looks a little bit more towards the mentality of gratitude and different types of tools and things we can do to help to kind of give that support system to ourselves and to our wider environment. So I'd love to start off with anyone in our panel, really, to just talk about the self-check-in aspect. What are some things you do to check in and manage your mental health? Maybe we can start with Jessica.
Yeah, happy to jump in. I love this topic. So, I'm thinking about the things that kind of my body does to cue me in on, like, yeah, things are not so great. Whenever I get a lot of tension in my shoulders and I feel like I'm like this all the time, that's a really great indicator that it's time for me to be a little more intentional about the time that I'm spending on my self-care. I would say also anytime that my attention is on very trivial things. Like when I get a little too wrapped up in the housewives and what Giselle said to the other one, that's how I know, like, okay, what are your priorities and what are you avoiding by getting so, wrapped up in other folks' business, if that makes sense. So those are the first two things that come to mind for me. Yeah.
No, that's amazing. And I will say that sometimes in checking in, it's also you can take a pause by engaging in some of these reality TV shows or whatever it may be, because everyone has a different way of wanting to just kind of zone in and check in the moment. So thank you for sharing. Maybe Avery, would you like to share a little bit about self check-ins, for example?
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me this afternoon, this snowy afternoon over here in Toronto. when I think about my own, self-care and how I stay connected, one of the greatest tools that I was given was the importance of having a journal. As somebody who loves to write, but also loves to talk, it's always great to have this safe space that I can say whatever I want in this little book that stays beside my bed, and whether it's, during the day, maybe I just had something, a tough call, or, something was stressing me out, or right before bed when I just want to just talk about how I'm feeling or talk about what I want to do the next day or in the following weeks. It's always great to have some place to just express yourself and say what you need to say that's on your mind. So I would say my journal for sure is one of the greatest things for me.
Journaling, while not for everyone, I think definitely if you have a knack for wanting to put pen to paper, and actually I find it helpful because you can see what you've written and you can go back to it. I think I've tried, because one of my self-care practices is trying to make some sort of journaling, but sometimes I do it in the form of a voice note, or I know that sometimes people can use picture references. So they may put something like a board up to say, well, this is kind of where I'm seeing myself right now, or this is kind of where I'd like it to go. So it's a bit of checking in with myself and also kind of projecting this is where I'd like to get myself within this short span of time. So that's kind of an interesting practice I like to put in place. Jesse, I'd love to hear about how you do the self-check-in.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you everyone for being here today on this panel. Yeah, it's a fascinating question and a fascinating subject. I'm sure different for everyone, but in my own personal experience, what I found really beneficial and helpful is to remember how interconnected physical and mental health, can be. In my case, I have been, for most of my life, aware of my mental well-being, and I've been in tune with it in terms of it not being okay or being okay. But my physical well-being in terms of the pillars of what I would consider to be the pillars of physical well-being: sleep, nutrition, exercise. For many years, these things I felt were disconnected a bit from my mental health, as in being tired and feeling irritable or feeling the inability to concentrate are not as connected as they really are. And for me, those things are tightly connected, I've realized. So staying in tune with myself and being aware of my mental well-being really starts with every day taking care of those pillars of and being attentive to those pillars of physical well-being. First and foremost, in terms of getting the right nutrition, getting proper meals all day, getting at least half an hour to an hour of exercise, getting the sleep that I need, which is at least 8 hours of sleep. Personally, that's how much I need to function, and realizing the particulars of those pillars and exactly what I need as a kind of baseline for myself every day, on which my mental well-being can be built upon, you might say. So that's really what I've tried to do for myself, especially over the last few years, into pandemic and post-pandemic, for sure.
No, such great thoughts, and also some great words that I'd like to kind of reemphasize, such as baseline, pillars. These are things that I'm hearing, and I know, again, for those of you in the audience as well as here on the team, each of us have different baselines and pillars, and it's important probably just to get to that point where we understand what those are and understand what we need to do to fulfill those pillars. The other thing I think as well, you used a really interesting term of disconnected. And I think a lot of times in the hustle and bustle of things, whether it be both personally and professionally, and dealing with all the pressures that we have, it is easy to get disconnected from ourselves, disconnected from those same set pillars that we believe we've established. And I think it's so important to, again, just give yourself a bit of compassion in that, in knowing that the self-check-in is something that we aim to do, just like many things, such as going to the gym or maybe journaling every day. We set these goals for ourselves and give specific timelines, but when it doesn't happen, I think compassion is one of the things I also would like to add and lean to in this process. Just recognizing that, okay, it didn't happen today, that's fine. You can go back at it tomorrow. But the important thing is just always still bringing and prioritizing an awareness to the importance of our mental health. I'd love to round off that final bucket and section to Melissa as to just your ways. I know you gave us a little sample, but there's so much more to your practices of the self check-in, and then kind of pigeon dovetailing that into not just your own self check-in, but the benefits of aspects of, for example, like collective care.
First, I want to honor, thanks so much for that question, Chris, as well as the wisdom that's in the room here. I do think of things in an interconnected way. And so, part of my self check-in, there's kind of like a toolkit or this like wellness basket that I bring with me. And it's so interesting because I was listening to Jess and Avery and Jesse, and there's components of all of those things that are within it, So it's like the indicators that Jess was talking about. That's where I had to start of like, how do I even know that I might not be in a good way? So yes, some of it is like, where are my shoulders? Do I need to bring them down? How long has my tongue been at the roof of my mouth? Have I been breathing deeply? Like I tend to hold my breath. If that's the case, how does my stomach feel? Right? Does it feel clenched? Where are my thoughts going? Because if I'm coming up with a bunch of dramas in my head, then I'm not in a good way, right? So those indicators I think are really powerful of letting us know when we might not be. There's some in my coaching practice and some of the work that we do here, bringing that in terms of self-awareness can be really helpful of just where folks at. And then this other piece around journaling or voice notes or whatever the mechanism might be of getting the thoughts that are in your head onto something. There's something really powerful about moving that from a place of subjectivity. It's in you to a place of objectivity. It's something you can hear or see outside of you. I think there's so much clarity that can come from that. I think it's really powerful. So going back to what Avery was sharing around journaling and Chris, what you were sharing around voice notes. And then Jesse, this interconnected piece around like my nutrition, my connection to my body, all of those things are, I think, interconnected into our well-being. So it's like sometimes I forget that I have this whole body attached to my head, right? And sometimes I have to speak to myself kind of like a dog, like, you need to take yourself out for a walk, sis. Time to go for a walk, And so when I think about some of those things, for me that show up for self check-in is, so those indicators, in addition to the other pieces that were shared in the room, I would say that there's this two things that I do, particularly when the nights are longer, is I think about what my light practice is. So for instance, I've got a lamp really close here to me. I'm lucky enough to have a window where I can see outside. So trying to keep that open during the day, also keeping the cold out, but seeing sunshine, going outside, feeling the sun or feeling the day on me is part of that. And then the other piece is eating sunshine. So I just heard actually earlier today of how watermelon can have positive effects on our mental health or mental well-being. Oranges do that for me. I think really intentionally about the tree, where it is in the world, the tree it grew on, the sun that would have hit this fruit, and then it's coming to me and I'm eating it. And now I'm getting some of the energy of that sun. So those are just a couple of things that I like to do, particularly in these kind of late fall, winter months that we all know it's going to be a stretch, right? It's going to be about 5 months that we're going to have of this. So those are just a few things. And then there was another piece that you had shared, Chris. Did you want me to go into some?
I will in just a sec, but I did want to kind of bring up the other aspects of, and thank you so much, Melissa, for sharing some really insightful thoughts to light practice, getting our thoughts in our head onto something, really asking those questions of where my thoughts are going. And so I'd love to just generally put it out to the persons in this room and also to anyone in the audience that wants to put in a comment in the chat. Was there ever a time that you realized, and this is kind of going back to the disconnected component, was there ever a time that you realized like, oh, I'm getting these feelings, it is the lights are going down, the light hours are shortening, it's getting colder? Because I know for sure myself, especially someone who's lived in hot and cold climates, you just think, okay, business as usual. And then you don't realize, why am I feeling a little more groggy in the morning? Or why do I feel a little slow to start? Why do I have less mental clarity? So I'd love to know from anyone in the group if you've ever had that kind of moment where you had to catch yourself and says, oh, this is what this is. This is where I'm at.
Can I offer something there, Chris?
Of course. Go right ahead, Jesse.
Yeah, I think for me, there was a shocking moment really this year. I'm an early riser and an early worker by nature. I like to get things done earlier in the day as opposed to later, just out of habit. And there is a period here where you really stop waking up with the sun. You start waking up and working. And it's not, it doesn't feel like a gradual thing. It certainly didn't feel like a gradual thing this year at all. It really felt like I woke up one morning and just like, oh, I'm going to have to go through a few weeks at least of like just waking up in the dark and getting up and starting my day in the dark, which is as early as I like to be. That is still a disconcerting feeling a bit. It's disorienting. It can throw things off a bit just in terms of your, if your approach to the day is rhythmic in a way of like following the sun a little bit, or following the light in terms of your own feelings about how the day is going and progressing, it throws everything off balance. And I think for whatever reason this year, I was very aware of it and tried to not power through it, which I don't like to do, but just sort of experience it as opposed to letting it drag my mornings down, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, thank you for mentioning that, Jesse, and it's so true. We all have our regular routines in general, and so I think similarly that's how I felt. I think before even moving back up here, I would get up early because I rise with the sun, but then you realize, oh, maybe that's not always the best thing anymore because the sun is changing and the timelines is changing. So I might need to create some other kind of motivators or alarms or tricks to just kind of get me up and get me going in a different way. And I think that's also another key and salient point to the check-in and to this whole process within self-care is being adaptable to the changes within your body, the changes within your schedule, the changes within the external circumstances that come about, which we don't always have control over. And so that mindset of adaptability and flexibility is always a key one that we do promote, and I think could be very helpful in both our personal and our professional journeys. That really then helps us to look at realizing that as much as and as important as the process of self-care and self-check-in, that we are more than just ourselves. There's a greater universe and a greater purpose that I believe we all really are here for, and that really brings into the perspective of the collective in terms of the group, and thinking of concepts such as collective care, which really is for those of you in the audience that are hearing this term for the first time, looking to seeing members' well-being and particularly emotional health and as a shared responsibility of the group rather than just a lone task. And there is something to be said in trying to create that support group and trying to find what people call as your tribe. And so that's the part where I wanted to segue into, Melissa, because I know that you have some really great practices that you help to recommend, and also you practice in the firm and with our different clients and candidates. So I would love to kind of get us to deep dive into your thoughts on collective care and just some of the different aspects of how that can be helpful in our mental health journey.
Well, it's so interesting because I think it goes back to the question that you had asked around awareness, like when did that come up for you? Jesse, I agree in terms of like, I feel like the awareness piece is so much of this work, actually. Like you had mentioned, you can be an affect to it, or you can be in front of it doing something about it. That moment for me, when I really noticed it, was March 2020. And, I don't know, March 2020 hit, and then the following winter is, I think, when I felt it the most. Because we were all slowed down, right? I wasn't going to the house parties or the dance floors or the what have yous, right? Dinner parties, things like that. We were all inside. And so it's really interesting what that slowing down did. Because what I think for me, it was this greater awareness that I had of myself, which was this unexpected gift, actually, at the time. If we can call it that, I think we can. So when I think about collective care, I think I think a lot about that time, actually. What the instinct was is look for the helpers. Look for the helpers. And it also got me really clear what I like to call my trust circle. Okay. Folks in the room will have heard me reference the interview with Oprah Winfrey and Michelle Obama, where, Michelle was talking about, yes, I'm talking about, if they go low, you go high. But before you can go high, you got to go low with your trust people, right? Or you need to be in a circle of people that have your back, that you can be unfiltered, and they will not judge, is what I mean by that, to define it, right? The folks that are going to ask, do you need to vent? Do you want to be distracted from it? Do you want advice? Those folks. So I think about who I surround myself with. I went very much into journaling at that time. All these jokes started coming up. I know Jess is also a comedian. I'm sure something came up similarly, but I would write down these jokes, and then I would have this Wednesday Zoom meetup with some friends. So the midway tune-up is what I like to call it, of who do I surround myself intentionally in the midway of my trust circle, and then share the jokes with them, see if it would land. They would give me feedback, and then we kind of had fun with it. And so there's a trail effect to that, I think, today, of who is my trust circle, who do I bring towards looking for the helpers. So who else is talking about mental health when we're in fall and winter? I've been thinking a lot about folks that have a psychotherapy background that I follow, with a social justice lens. Those are some of the pieces in collectivity. The last thing that I'll say is, a lot of these systems of oppression will try to download onto us individually. And so the antidote for that, for me, is collectivity. So I don't hold on to it myself. It doesn't eat me up on the inside. I don't hold bitterness or resentfulness towards it. I hold it collectively with others who can say, I'll take a piece of that. I'm referencing Helen here, one of our colleagues. I'll take a piece of that. You don't need to hold that on your own. Just a few things when I think about collective care.
No, thank you so much. And also thank you for bringing the presence of the room of our amazing colleagues who I know are also there supporting us and rooting for us virtually, including our founder and managing partner, Jason Murray, who I know will probably chime in at some point. You really brought up another tangent that will bring it in. I'd like to now shift it to Jessica when it talked about the comedy component. And I think, now getting to know Jessica a little bit, understanding that comedian side of her, I think that also can have the duality of the component of something that she has sought out and built up for herself, but something she's sharing with other people. And when you do comedy and people watch comedy, you don't know some of the impacts that it can have. For some people, it could be light and just something for leisure, but sometimes comedy can also help to break through tension and help to kind of help to break you away from some of that heaviness that you may be going through. So Jess, can you talk to us a little bit about that journey within comedy, and maybe just kind of some thoughts that maybe have come to mind or maybe have not, in this aspect of how comedy really helps in our mental health journey and just in your journey overall?
Oh, I love this. I love this so much. I wasn't expecting it, but I'm glad it's here. So, I think comedy is like healing, right? Just like Avery shared with us, like journaling, whether it's a voice note, like most of my sets are like voice notes that I'm like, okay, let me transcribe this. And it's like a journal that I'm sharing with the world. And I think having a witness to that experience, there's something about that. So I encourage everybody. It's kind of like karaoke. You either love it or you hate it, and that's okay. But you should try it once. But yeah, and then of course laughter, that gives us all those good, healthy dopamine, serotonin, all that good stuff. But then you also might find that if you are in a new place, so for example, I'm living in Chicago, you'll find people who might see the world similarly to you, and some people who don't. They are there as well, but that's okay, right? Because you kind of gather around the similarity of really enjoying this particular thing. And yeah, so there's community there. And I found, the last thing I'll share is I found that comedy is really inclusive. It is probably, I liken it to like an after school hobby that I have, like as an adult now. And it is such a diverse group of folks with such different experiences. And some people, I mean, they say don't judge a book by its cover, but there's so many different stories that I've heard. And it's really a delightful thing. And in the winter, sometimes I tend to stay in the house more often than I should because it is so chilly here. But when I go, I never regret going. I'm always really happy that I made the trek through the snow to the open mic on a Thursday, whatever the case may be. Really great question. Thank you.
No, you're more than welcome. Yeah, I think the reason why I brought it up is when Melissa made such the poignant point to say, that you had that side to you as well. I wanted to bring that out more to show that there's such creative ways to how we can look at this process, and also how we just explore ourselves as individuals, and how we realize that in doing that, going back to the whole process of checking in with self, and then by extension looking at the collective, how all of it is so interrelated and can overlap. And I wanted to share that with our audience. Similarly, another really creative and very expressive personality that I've gotten to know more and more is Avery. So I'm throwing over to Avery now. You talked about journaling, which can be a very personal thing. I know with some people, some folks, they look at journaling, and some people then decide to have that in their trust circle, then say, hey, I want to share a few thoughts that I had from my journal. Some people do that. But Avery, can you expand a bit more about not just only your journaling process, but other areas in which you've been able to express yourself, and that's helped in your mental health journey, and also then bringing that into how you've been able to share that into a more collective space?
Yeah, I'm gonna lean in a little more. I'm gonna get a little more cozy with y'all, if that's okay with you. I want to circle back actually to one thing that you said, actually, Chris, that I really loved, where you talked about adaptability to these new changes. And I just want to add on to that, to say to folks to give yourself grace with these changes, because once you give yourself grace, you give yourself permission, but then it allows you to be intentional. Right? And so when you allow yourself to then be intentional, you can focus on the things that make you feel good. And in moments like this, when the weather changes and when the sun is setting, sometimes your happiness just has to be a priority, and that's one of the things that I feel like that focus on that, helps with my mental health, is simply, what do I need right now? And if it means I need a little dance break, I need a little 15-minute dance break, I'm gonna do it. If that means I want to eat mac and cheese for dinner, I'm gonna do it. If I, want to go for a walk, or, I want to go see some friends, right? It's like when you put yourself first, you'll find that just life just feels just a little bit more sweeter, And I think that's something that, as you grow up and, you learn more about the world, you give yourself grace and permission to do that. So I want to share that piece. And then, on top of everyone has said here, the power of community, the power of, having a safe space, a trust, group of a trusted group of friends. For me, I'm leaning into mentorship. While I am an adult, I am still very open to the fact that I still need help. I still need like a an overarching ear, a support system. While I have my blood family, I very much have a chosen family, right? And as someone who's a part of the ballroom scene here, chosen family is everything. And so, even just last night, I was over with my chosen family last night, and we just talked about everything, and that just makes life, once again, just feel a little bit more sweeter, knowing that you have a group of people that you can just sit in a basement somewhere and just, have a good time, right? So, and if you find yourself in a place of loneliness, right, allow yourself to find things that have presence. So maybe listening to other voices, or maybe perhaps a podcast that allows you to have voices coming into the room, into the space, so you don't feel as alone. Watching a YouTube video, perhaps even like watching a movie, right? So that you're still getting this interaction, even if it's not, let's say, physical, there's still some sort of relationship happening. It allows you to not feel as alone, because I know these times of the year can get really tough for folks. So those are my 3 things I would definitely would love to share with everyone this afternoon. So back to you, Chris.
Thank you so much. And I really love that aspect of recognizing the necessity of the support system, and how that parlays into the fact that we have chosen family, we have blood family, but support can really show up in so many different ways. And I also really like that you came back to the fact of making happiness a priority and putting yourself first. And I know that, especially for persons that are very giving and they donate a lot of their time to many causes, especially as we do here at the firm, the reality is when you can fill your cup, that especially it will have the intention of the overflow, so that it will then be able to have that impact into the collective, and then you become, in a great sense, a pillar of support within yourself. And so you can be that strong pillar to yourself, and then by extension be that strong pillar for other people. But I guess a lot of people do it in the analogy of the mask in the airplane, putting your oxygen mask on first before you put it onto somebody else, because you have to be able to be standing and alive and well, and kind of be firm. Again, going back to that first component that we saw, kind of understanding, like what Jessie says, what your pillars are and what you need. And that also then parlays into when you're in your trust circle, or you're with your chosen family or blood family, you can articulate, hey, this is where I'm at. This is what I need right now. Because a lot of times people can't read minds. And so they can make assumptions. They can maybe read from your body language, but it does help to kind of name it and call it out there. And put it out there, so that if somebody is available to step in and help, that they and able to, they can. I'd like to then bring that into Jessie, who's been such a support. I know that in one of our team meetings, we spoke a lot about just you're doing so many different things, and just I love that humility that you bring to the table. And so when I think about collective care, I see you, and you've seen you shown up as someone that is you're quietly there supporting, you're doing the work. You're not necessarily saying it out loud, but you're there. And I'd love for you to have that opportunity to just share about your journey when it comes to where you see collective care being helpful, and also maybe kind of how you create that space within collective care and within community.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. I'll say that I definitely, in terms of my professional life, and by extension, of course, my personal life, because I find those things are connected. I was much more content and mentally balanced when I left an environment, and also left behind my own preconceived ideas of what a workspace should be, in terms of like competition, in terms of excelling ahead of others, or constantly re-examining your position in like a professional organization. And folks do this for social positioning as well, though I don't tend to do it as much. But I found I became a lot more content, and a lot more just happier, and just more fulfilled when I just remembered that it's a collective exchange, all of this work that we're doing. We're all here helping each other. And again, this is partly different environments that I've been in the past that encourage this kind of thinking, and also taking my responsibility in terms of seeing it, and that this, like, clinging to that as if that's the only way that one can do work, is to constantly measure oneself against others and try to excel that way. But yeah, I really try to with this work and my work with the firm here in particular. I've really tried to like remember every day, like how am I helping everyone and how am I supporting the team, and that really means putting aside like any feelings of like any ego or any kind of like, oh, this is what I should be doing and this is what I shouldn't be doing, or this is my job and this is not my job, or my time is this or that. But really just like, yeah, taking every opportunity to help as just something is really fulfilling, and just like taking value and whatever contributions, big or small, that I can make, and seeing that reflected back at me. Really trying to pay attention to the moments where something I've done has been able to help another person in their day, not just get a task done, but really like make it easier, like not just get it done, but like get it done in a way that's helpful and supportive and not just functional, if that makes sense.
No, that's amazing, Jesse. And it's funny because in that, and I just want to kind of reference some of because we're having so much great conversation also from our audience. So with Urmila, who's another one of our colleagues, she said she loved the relationship to have happiness, that comment that Avery said. And she said, what do I need right now? But I love the way you twisted that. So in terms of collective care, you're like, what does this person need right now? So I might have a thought, but in addition to them articulating that, it's also really thinking from their lens and their angle, and I think really personalizing that. And I think in the span of the work that we do, because again, we're looking at it very holistically from a personal and professional standpoint, I think we definitely look at the process of thinking of what clients need in that time, need to hear. When do we need to step in? When do we need to step back? And I think that's something that we also apply to this mental health journey, into the aspects of interacting with other people as well as ourselves. I also want to just give a shout out and thanks to Angela Cesar. I love some of the different tips that you're putting in terms of how you're loving a good movie, you're loving the writing. So Avery sounds like a spirit buddy for you, hearing other people's stories, which I know is really personal for me as well. So again, and I'd like to just thank the audience and ask you to continue to comment and share with us your tips on not only the self-check-in and self-care, but also your ideas and thoughts around collective care. The other thing that you've mentioned as well, Jesse, is talking about giving back. And I think that's a really big component. And I think within collective care and thinking about the collective healing of it, volunteerism is a really another big platform which a lot of people can access that helps them in their mental health journey. But because it sometimes, while the checking in is important and trying to figure out what our boundaries and our pillars are, as you've said, Jesse, and a number of the others, shifting that focus into realizing that there are other people going through a lot of things too does help us to bring a different level of perspective. So I'd love to kind of, again, this is to anyone in this into this chat, and as well, and you in the audience, feel free to comment on just different aspects of volunteerism that maybe you do in your own individual way, and how you found that helpful to just you progressing and evolving as a human being, and then tying that into the mental health component. Does anybody want to take a stab at that?
I can jump in here. I will say from two different perspectives, when I have not volunteered for an extended period of time and I'm looking around like, okay, what's wrong with me? It's because I'm like me, I, and I haven't really done anything to support or help anybody else, if that makes sense. So unfinished thought. On the flip side of it, I think volunteering in the sense of kind of going out with my sorority and doing something like in a really like structured way is all fine and well, but sometimes I don't have access to that. So sometimes it's supporting people through other talents or time or treasures, putting on my institutional advancement hat for a second, but being able to, help review a friend's resume who's been on the job market for a while, or, okay, let's ideate. What are we trying to do? How do we get there? And I find those things are really helpful for me. But I think it's on my vision board to do some more volunteering for that reason, because I know that it does wonders for mental health and just how you see things.
Thank you so much, Jessica. It's true. It really does a lot. I think definitely I've had some moments where you just get so in the weeds with what's going on in your own life, and sometimes you need a fresh take. You need to shake things up. You need to change that routine, and that's another element that can bring to it's good to create the structure. Within that structure, you being again open, flexible, adaptable. Sometimes you just need a little change. I know Melissa has said on many a times, even in terms of settling oneself, taking a brisk walk has the same impact in terms of settling one's mind as much as it can help to get you out of your head. Changing the change of scenery. Well, right now I'd probably say a change of warm scenery would be great, sitting on a beach. But in general, there's so many different ways that we can look at that. Melissa, do you have any thoughts when it comes to volunteerism and how that really can play a pivotal role in our mental health journey?
When I think of giving back to community, it's such an important piece when we're thinking about us being interconnected. And I also just wanted to share in advance of that, we're talking about mental well-being. The reality is that there is a number of us that experience loneliness in this city, in Toronto at least, in Treaty 13 territory. Toronto Foundation put through a vital signs report. I think they said something like 22% are experiencing loneliness at least 3 days a week. That's a lot of us. Some emotions that can come from that, particularly when we think about us being collectively interconnected as humans, is that there might be anger that's in the space. And sometimes beneath the anger is grief. And sometimes beneath the grief is love with nowhere to go. And so a really great place to put that love is in giving back to the community. So I'm borrowing here from Leah Manam Ema, who's a psychotherapist, as well as a social justice. Does a lot of work in social justice work. And that really resonated with me. Love with nowhere to go. So I know we're going to be putting up some resources around community fridges that are in the city and around you locally here. So I've volunteered, and both Avery and I are also working on some things together, in particular with the MENA Project. And this is a youth-centered work. When I think about generational thinking, that we borrow this earth from generations to come. And so we don't get it from our ancestors, we borrow it from the future. So spending time providing resources, support, mentorship within youth-centered spaces is really important. I think in addition, if I'm being really honest with myself, is, I'm in my mid-40s, I'm not a mom. So how might I be able to share this wisdom with others, is part of that too. So I'll pause there.
Thank you so much. And actually, you're always thinking ahead, Melissa. I love it, because that's exactly what we were going to do next, is because we believe it's important to give tangible resources and tips and tools. And so one of the initiatives that is out there right now in the spirit of giving back is Community Fridges Toronto. We're going to put a head in the chat so that you can see it right there. So they're a Toronto-based mutual aid initiative created to nourish the communities and our neighbors. And they firmly believe that access to food is a right and not a privilege. And they have volunteers all over the city, and they work within their own neighborhoods, collaborating with like-minded partners to place and maintain community refrigerators throughout the city. And they really provide neighbors the opportunity to donate food as well as take what they need, ensuring accessible food is 24/7. So just wanting to give a moment to highlight and a great initiative. And also thank you, Melissa, for calling it on terms of the work that we do here at BIPOC Executive Search, both in our capacity as executive search facilitators, as well as the community outreach that our colleagues such as Avery, Zoe, yourself, Melissa, and a lot of our colleagues work on, because it is in the collective and it is in giving back that we can make the world a better place, and by extension bring a bit of joy to other people as well as ourselves. So I really, really love that.
And just a quick shout out to Zoe, who's also a highly intentional chef that brought the community fridges to us as well, bringing their spirit in here too.
Thank you. No, that's perfect. And with those shout outs, I think with the little bit of time we have left, I'll kind of zone this into the last topic of gratitude, because I want to bring, we started with intention setting. We started with kind of just positioning our minds to understanding the self check-in and self-care, to bringing that into the collective. But we also, and Melissa, you named this a lot, and I know Jessica, Avery, Jesse, you talk about this at different points in terms of our mentality, our pillars. So gratitude is the part I'd like to end the note on this. And so if we can just talk about, in the audience, you feel free to mention one or two things you're grateful for. But Jesse, can you kind of get the ball rolling here in just terms of maybe one thing today that you're grateful for, and more importantly, your thoughts on how gratitude has played in your life?
Yeah, I can say I'm grateful. I've had a friend with me this whole time who's been supporting me. I wonder if I can get him on camera here. But he's so I'm grateful for one of my two cats, Hansel, who's sitting with me on the desk today. Yeah, my cats are a big part of my mental health in terms of my workspace and my home life. They're both elderly, but so they've been with us for a long time. But yeah, taking care of something. I don't have kids either. I probably won't. So taking care of something has been a huge thing for me, and I'm grateful for for life in my house, or plant life too. Yeah, in terms of thoughts on gratitude, just taking stock of what you have, and it's not wrong to want for more ever. It's not ever wrong to hope for more. I think you deserve more, but always be grateful for the things that you do have, because it goes without saying, for sure.
Thank you. Avery, maybe one thing that you're grateful for right here, right now, and just your thoughts on gratitude in this practice.
Yeah, we love gratitude. We love gratitude. Simply, I'm grateful for my home. That's one thing that in this time and space, this year, we cannot take for granted. A lot of people are experiencing houselessness right now, particularly in this city and all around the world. I look outside and I think, wow, it's so cold. But then I'm looking once again from the inside looking out. Some people, that is their reality. They are outside. And so in this very moment, I am grateful for my home. Yeah. I'll leave it back to you, Chris.
Thank you, Avery. Jessica, what are your thoughts, and what is one thing you're grateful for?
I promise I'm not trying to be funny. I'm grateful for Spotify Wrapped. I'm going to tell you why. Because it has shown me, okay, back in March, this is where you were. Back in April, back in June, I remember Who Broke My Heart and why I was listening to that song on repeat. I remember when I rediscovered Pastor T.L. Barrett, which is like gospel music that you might hear as the score of a film. Jesse, you know what I'm talking? You know what I mean? So
I do know.
Jesse's our resident music guy, one of our guys. So, and he does a lot of great work in promoting all different types of artists within the different communities. But sorry, go ahead, Jessica.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I think Spotify Wrapped dropped today, and so it's just like, we've gone through a journey and we're still here, and we get to celebrate and reflect. And music, I think, just has such a powerful, it's just such a powerful force. Like my grandmothers would start the day with gospel music, like on the radio. I think that's probably how they made it through, like starting with this inspiration as they walk out into whatever they're walking out into. And so I keep that in mind. It might not always be gospel, but it's going to be something to kind of lift the spirits. And so I'm grateful for music, I think, and Spotify Wrapped. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I love that, and I love that you did it. You showed your gratitude in a very unique way, unique to Jessica. So, Melissa, we round off with yourself, and then I will, of course, then say my part of what I'm grateful for, because I think it's important practice.
Amazing. You know, I'm not able to see who the LinkedIn user is that put a comment in the chat around joy and centering joy. And I just wanted to call that in here. I feel very thankful that I'm able to access joy. Joy is a form of resistance. Joy within the cracks of the imperfections of my life and the small things. I'm grateful for the fact that I have water that I can get out of my tap and drink. I'm grateful that I can have glasses on so I can see. I'm grateful to hear the laughter within this room and with colleagues and friends. And so when I think about it's an attitude of gratitude, you know, it's in the small things, it's in the medium things, it's in the big things. You know, the other day I was with a friend and I'd never heard her laugh so much that she snorted. And I thought, how grateful am I to have lived the day to have heard that? So, an attitude of gratitude in small to big things is what I'm grateful for. Back over to you, Chris.
Thank you. And I will round this off in just being grateful right now for the present, grateful for all of your amazing contributions, as well as to those of our audience members and our team members there virtually. I think it's really given me some really great insights into the different ways that I can reflect on my mental health, my mental wellness journey, reflect on things that maybe I need to do a bit more of that check-in on. But also, again, in just talking about collective care, the reminder that there's we have a whole team, we have a whole family, we have a trust circle within our groups and within our own individual spaces wherever we are. So I'm just grateful for having access to those support systems and knowing that there's a whole collective behind me. You know, Melissa, you always talk about you're not walking alone when you come through the door. You have a whole set of ancestors and a tribe and a community behind you. And that's how I feel in this space, both virtually and with our audience. And and I'm just grateful that I can be able to practice the attitude of gratitude and be in a space that promotes the attitude of gratitude. So with that being said, I'd love to thank each and every one of you again, just for your time. Again, thank you to all those persons that have taken the time to comment, to participate, to follow up. We will place some resources, some definitions and so forth on things such as seasonal affective disorder, on collective care, also our community fridges and places that you can go to give back. Please also feel free to follow us on our social media, LinkedIn, and so forth. Oh, there I am. Okay, I didn't realize. A bit startled, but yes, please feel free to connect with us on social media, because as you can see, we are a firm that really is passionate about creating space in a holistic way, looking at not just the professional journey, but that personal journey as well. And we hope that it's been productive and insightful. So thank you again, everyone. We wish you a very happy and warm, wherever you are, like warm internally, afternoon. And please stay tuned for more live series to come.